Robert is with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which doesn't have all their talent in Washington, D.C. Some of it is actually in the field. And the White House initiative that maybe he'll get to tell you about is managed by Robert. Is that going to be a good mic?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this will be a little easier. Well, first, thank you, Gordon. And what you're going to find out is that Carolyn and I actually talk to each other, and we've stolen from each other in terms of what we're going to talk about. So actually, they say that you have to repeat things about 3 times before you remember it, so we're going to do a little bit of that today. But I'd also like to thank Paul Wright and particularly Hugh Aldridge for inviting us to this session. We're a little bit different because we're talking about agriculture, and we're talking about a much smaller city with Fresno City, 500,000 people as opposed to San Francisco and Paris. But in terms of when you think about smart cities, you also can't forget that equally important is the smart countryside. And don't leave that out. The common themes that have been talked about today in terms of technology, broadband, and data, I mean, those were things mentioned throughout today, are the same issues in rural areas in California and across the world. If we, there's my graphic of that. One of the things I thought we'd do is it's important to have a little bit of context to figure out where you are and tie everything together. And since this is a France, California, Paris, San Francisco connection, I felt compelled to put up some of the sort of very basic connections between the two. One of them, in terms of world economies, California, which thinks of itself as a global economy by itself, would be the 9th largest if it were a country, and France is 5th. California used to be 5th, actually, 10 years ago. But if you look in terms of agriculture, both are also global agricultural powers. California is 9th in global production of agricultural products, and France is 7th as a comparison between the two. And if you, I collected some numbers just to do a different comparison also of France and California. The important bottom line there is the comparison of irrigation or irrigated land, that in France only 5% of cropland is irrigated, whereas California, 77%. All of the production that Carolyn just talked about would not be possible without irrigation, hence the importance of water in California. And I would say, I'll point out 2, I guess you could call them fun facts of the difference between California and France, that France has 2.6 times the amount of land in wine grapes as California, which tells you priorities. And even though California is known as a wine-producing state, but California produces 16 times more tomatoes than France. So you can figure out yourself the sort of priorities there, what that means. Carolyn showed you a picture, and I'll just reinforce that, of the Central Valley, where those products come from. And you know, the thing to remember is, if San Francisco and Paris have this incredible food culture that they're known for, it is dependent upon the rural region to supply that food. So you can't leave it out. And to reinforce what Carolyn mentioned about the importance of doubling food production by 2050, if already half the world's population now live in cities, which has never happened before, by 2050, the estimate is 70% or more will be in cities. Hence, the importance of the rural areas and their supplying of food. And one of the areas, particularly, and this is another version when Carolyn talked about the numbers for California, the San Joaquin Valley, which Fresno is the center of, produces half of what California produces, and that's about $26 billion. That's not a small amount. And Fresno County by itself is the #1 ag-producing county in the United States with about $6 billion. And the numbers that just came out for last year are even higher than that. That serves as a base, because California farmers are consumers of technology as they adopt to opportunities and challenges. So I think that the development of new agriculture technology, which is happening and more to come, and its adoption in the San Joaquin Valley offers continued growth of the regional agriculture economy and the potential to develop an agriculture technology cluster centered on Fresno. This will help with both the continued economic prosperity in the region and also with the job issues in Fresno City itself. This new AgTech regional cluster, which can happen, and our goal that we're working on from the Strong Cities perspective is to develop the infrastructure foundation so this cluster could or can develop. And again, it is an opportunity where you have two of California's core strengths that Carolyn mentioned, agriculture and technology, where the two combine together or cross-fertilize, to go back to agricultural terms. And we actually have two very specific action items that we're working on. And this is the hands-on part of, it's not theoretical, that we're looking at. One, to develop the wireless high-capacity broadband infrastructure in the rural areas, and the other, to develop collaboration or formalize collaboration between USDA and the Department of Energy federal labs to serve as a source of innovation. If you look at what this technology is, the simplest way to boil it all down, it's remote sensing devices or wireless. That's where the technology has gone. And so that's the common link no matter what the type of, or what the technology does. It does depend, it's wireless, it does depend on rural wireless broadband. We identified about 5 different areas which we think are needed for this AgTech cluster to develop. And there's pieces of that already in place. And there's areas that we can sort of leverage along. One of them being wireless rural broadband, which I mentioned. It's a critical piece because without that, you don't have, it's the basic foundation, you don't have the other components of the economic sector in the rural areas, from ag technology to rural telehealth, transportation and logistics, public safety, and direct market access. All those pieces are critically dependent on broadband, but they themselves are not developing it. And I'm just going to go through a couple of the pieces for the AgTech cluster. Another is the new ag technology. And I'm guessing that most of the people here have no background in agriculture. Is there anyone? No, I don't see anyone. Okay, almost, okay. So basically, the point is that agriculture today is already very advanced in its use of technology. It is not, they've long since abandoned the horse and the plow. And it's not just the simple John Deere tractor, it's now the automatic John Deere tractor, which Carolyn showed a picture of, that doesn't need a person in it. But this new ag technology essentially hits at least 5 different areas. The core is increased in production. You've already heard the need to double food production. Where that increase is going to be is technology, which will drive yield. Water, critical issue in California. Nothing grows without irrigation. We have the opportunity with new technology for increased efficiency in the use of water and better utilization of that water. On the environmental side, you have both the opportunity to, you have the technology in there and on the food safety side. So I'll have to go through really quickly here. The other area is to look at innovation in ag research. And what we've done there is we've tied together the Pure Research Laboratory at Livermore Labs with the Department of Education and the Ag Research Specialty at the USDA Agricultural Research Service. We're tying the two together in cooperation and in turn tying that to Fresno State and its expertise as an ag school and applied research, focusing those 3 together with Fresno State's business innovation and business incubator facilities that they already have to basically take tech transfer to commercialization and move or get the source of innovation pushed into development of an ag tech cluster. And finally, I'll finish up here in terms of the key to all of this is broadband infrastructure. You've got rural wireless broadband, which I've talked about and the need for that. And then you've got the city side, Fresno City, and ultra high-speed broadband is a new component for further development of downtown. All of those pieces tie together on this chart schematically, the rural wireless broadband and all the individual pieces that drive, that would use rural wireless broadband, and then in turn tied to the city with the linking pieces here, and I won't read through all of them, but that's the linkage. The common linkage is broadband. And on your left side that you see, the component which has been discussed actually today is this aspect of better governance that is offered through the use of we call big data, city administration, public safety, and the city's general plan. That is an innovation that's offered through this linkage of broadband and wireless. So we've tied it all together into this one, and I'll finish here with that. That's what we're actually working on in Fresno itself. You could see it as a living pilot. If I come back next year, we'll have evolved another step further. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. And let me ask Joe to come up.